Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me. People are still coming in, so we'll give it a couple more minutes and hope that a few more people are live. Um, and we'll go from there. I'm not sure Mark Pokris is going to be joining us today. He injured himself, and I think he's busy a bit on Mondays now until he's through physio. So, do you call Natasha? Was Mark planning to come today?
So was that
I
for? Oh, sorry, I just logged on again. I thought I heard my name. Was that a
You
question
did
for
hear
me?
you did hear your name. I was just wondering
Okay.
if you recall if Mark was going to try to make this meeting or not.
I am not sure, but it didn't seem like it
That's
due
what I
to.
was figuring
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So welcome everyone. And Jay, I don't know as well if Jay's going to be able to make it or not. So I'm going to start by sharing the notes. Um, we might as well get going. We have a small group, but just kind of speak of the devil. There's Mark. Hi, Mark. We weren't sure you were going to make it. Um, and it's 4:02, so probably it's reasonable. And there's Jay as well. So cool. Lots of people. So welcome everyone. Um,
Kathy, I was hoping to introduce Laura Williams. She's with the Maine Audubon staff and does a lot of our fish-led free work. And so I wanted to invite her on. And
welcome. Now we are going to do a bit of a roundup. So if you and Laura want to share stuff later, that'd be great.
that sounds great.
We have a pretty casual meeting plan. Now there's one thing I do want to mention. I know that people often get to the webinar before I do, which I get it. You want to get there early and everything else. Just watch your timing. It's all admin stuff, but we can only have two of these meetings running at any given time on this site. So if you happen to pop and say really early, like before 3:30, you might kick some other webinar off. So just be careful with that because we're 100 people across Canada, so we're getting a lot of webinars, even though we have like 6 of these Zoom sets. We still run out. So just be aware of that and try not to come on board too early before the webinar start. Just to be careful. Now I uploaded the notes. I'll put them up again because I don't know if everybody would have got those. And welcome everyone. Just wanted to mention first that it's just a topic that's came across our desk the last 2 weeks. I'm going to share with Laura, and I'm going to ask Laura to talk about it. And we've had a recent incident of loon aggression in Canada, and she's going to share about it. And I just wanted to hear people's thoughts on this. So that's why I put it right up front because it's so unique. I kind of had been expecting it, but we have not seen this happen. So Laura, I'll turn it over to you. We can't hear you, Laura.
Oh,
Oh, there we can.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, someone reached out the past week because of that situation. They wanted to know what they could do and if it was like something that happens frequently or not. So yeah, so they are in Quebec. It's a lake association, and so first they told me that there had been like an attack of a loon on a swimmer in the lake on the lake, but then they added that actually, well, they think that it is the same loon. I guess we don't have any proof, but they are probably right. So that loon apparently attacked people, uh, like maybe 5 persons over the past 4 years. And so actually, that loon has like shown aggressive behaviors all summer, more or less, and someone was actually injured because of like I don't know the attack because of they were hurt by the beak of the loon. So the people on the lake are aware of like loon conservation, and they want to live like they want to they pay attention like to the loons, and they try not to get too close. But I don't know, maybe they didn't pay attention that time and they got too close. They're not sure. They should send a more detailed report at some point. What else? Yeah, the loons. So there's a couple, a pair on an island. It's a really small lake, so I guess maybe that makes it difficult not to get too close of the loons or the nest. And yeah, basically that's it, I think. Kathy, anything you want to add?
No, that sounds right. We got a little bit more details out of them, and we know that there was wing growing, and we know there was bull attacks, and we know that they had loons rearing up out of the water. Now, apparently, people like swimming in this lake. I did a couple looks at the lake online, and it's only about 750 meters wide. So that's what, about 900 yards? And it's in between, there's two islands on it. In between each island and the shoreline, it's under 100 meters. So it's under 110 yards. So they may be thinking they're away from the loons and not, but they're going to have a conversation with CWS. Like they're quite upset over this, obviously, because somebody's been hurt. And they're going to have a conversation with the Canadian Wildlife Service here. And I'm hoping they will reach out to me. We don't have a good answer for them other than stay away from the loons at this point. And they are hatching chicks annually. And they said that the aggression lasted all summer, which makes me think that they're getting near chicks that have been stashed in the wetland and things like that. Like it's the only thing I can think of that's going on. But we're just going to have to wait and see. They obviously want something done. So at this point, we'll have to leave it to the federal government and see what they come up with and what they inform us. But I thought, I was wondering how many other people had similar. I'm only finding one pseudo report online, and that was a woman who said one rose up aggressively when she was swimming. In the literature, it says that it happens, but I can't find any documentation anywhere that it happens.
I live on a 400-acre lake about, and we have 6 pairs, and one of my neighbors swims, open water swimming a ways out from shore towards, he's actually in the territory of the pair we called Oli and Lena. And as he would swim more into their chick rearing area, he was never attacked, but he did say, oh, they don't want me there. And I mean, he was aware. Now, personally, I would never be swimming as close to loons as those people are doing on that lake. I think they're way, way, way too close, and the people are making poor choices. So I hope the government will be on the side of the loons.
It's truly hard to say on that, whether the government will be on the side of the loons or not. Remember that in Canada, we have
a lot.
100,000 or I'm trying to remember right now. It's in between 100 and 200,000 pairs.
Yeah.
So, and I would assume that the second biggest population in Canada is in Quebec for the loons. And it's a fairly I don't know. It looks a little isolated, doesn't it to you, Laura? Like it's not too far northern into Quebec, but it's a small lake. So they had what, 23 cottages on it? So it's not huge. It's not really busy, and maybe they just haven't gotten used to people.
So when you say
100
the-
yards, so.
when
Sorry?
you say the government, what do you mean? And will you have an opportunity to give them input?
What I mean by the government is the federal government in this situation, because loons are only protected in Canada under under the migratory oh my god, I'm going to get it wrong. The migratory convention. That's the only thing loons are protected on in Canada because they are a common species. And so it would technically be under the responsibility of a conservation officer with the federal government of Canada, not the provincial government. And it will be the decision of that person they contact whether they reach out to or not. Now, we have a fantastic relationship with the population monitoring bodies in the federal government, but I don't know how good our relationship is with that management body. So there's no guarantee this they don't have to reach out to us. It's their decision. They're the authoritative body, but we have a good reputation, so they likely, we're hoping, will.
Yeah, Kathy, I get a lot of reports of people being followed by loons as they swim and being kind of steered by them. And I live in fear of this kind of story. But yeah, so far, I have not heard of this. I've also wondered about it with loons getting more aggressive, taking fish from anglers. But yeah, so far, I really haven't heard about something like this happening.
No, and I would second that, Tracy. I think, there's a lot of literature on loons being aggressive, of course, towards other loons, but towards other species as well. I mean, common loons are widely known to kill ducks and cormorants and in a couple of cases, swans. There's one report of several loons ganging up and killing a coyote that was swimming across the lake.
Wow.
There are at least a couple of reports in the literature, in fact, one back to Henry David Thoreau, of loons poking holes in canoes that were between chicks and adults. And so, if the loons are being threatened, feeling threatened, it doesn't surprise me, but I don't know of other reports of human attacks that have been documented.
What I find surprising is that if a swimmer gets too close of a loon, I guess the loon would show signs before it attacks. So the person should be able to tell if she or he is getting too close.
I agree, Laura, but I'm not sure that everybody is paying attention, or maybe they're missing some of the more subtle clues. And people were talking before about penguin dancing or rearing up, or even the vocalizations that loons could use. Yeah, I mean, we have had here in the United States some birds of prey that have done things like that, particularly since the bald eagles were taken off the endangered species list. We've had a couple of documented attacks of territorial bald eagles, or for that matter, great horned owls on people. And I think, as Kathy was saying, the response of the government is often very localized. And in some cases, they have eliminated those birds of prey. In a couple of cases, they tried to move them great distances, sometimes hundreds or thousands of miles, and it doesn't always work. They come back. So yeah, particularly with a species that's deemed to be common, this may be a difficult. Yeah, what I'm wondering about, and this is where I see some wonderful field people on here. I mean, Heinrich and John Cooley and Sheila and Griffin and people who have a lot of field experience with loons. Is there something that one could put there, that would deter loons from entering part of the lake? Like a big plastic bald eagle you know, or something, and just, you know, have a part of the lake, a beach or something like that, that is reserved for the people. I don't know how one comes up with a solution for this.
You know, one thing I'm thinking about with Laura, what you were saying, well, aren't they seeing the signs? I didn't do this much, but I did do a little open water swimming training for triathlon,
Oh,
and my husband was a big Ironman triathlete. And so when you're doing that open water training, you're just doing your stroke and you're not really, you know, you're tilting your head a bit, but you are not watching for like loons. So I think that's why if people are doing that kind of swimming, they're not going to be aware that they're near a loon. So that could be part of the problem. And I don't know if there's a way to like designate part of that lake for, you know, open water swimming. I know like in Minneapolis, where there are a lot of people doing triathlon training, which is different story, but they just did designate this one area. And I could see like how that would work on certain lakes, because you could have, you know, your open water swim area that would be away from a chick rearing territory, possibly.
no.
That's a good thing to suggest. And maybe we just need to do a little bit more education there. It's tough because we're hearing this third party, and because they want, like, I'm being very cynical here. If they want to have an action that's in their favor, they might not want to approach us directly. Like they've been approaching, somebody else approached Laura, and we've been getting a lot of this third party. Now, hopefully, the fact that they're going to CWS is a great start. I think that will help very well, but maybe we can offer some education and suggest open areas. I don't get the impression there's a lot of boating on this lake either. That's what the impression I got, Laura. What did you find out?
I didn't ask specifically, but I guess it's hard to tell. But she does mention people boating near the nest.
And it doesn't bother them. So that's an interesting point. Nobody's ever gone after a boat near the nest. The other thing I was wondering about is I was hoping to have a bit of information to share with you. We had somebody in Quebec with a huge problem with loons taking lures.
Mm-hmm.
And she's trying to haze them using a dog whistle this year. I have no idea if she succeeded. But that's the other thing we were wondering about. And my concern with that is it could literally, if this is an aggressive loon because of nesting behavior, it could literally make the situation worse if you try to haze that loon. And it could make them more aggressive versus less. And so I don't know if that'll work. Like I even read that some loons get visually agitated by the sight of a sail on a boat. And so I was wondering if a towel flapping would work. But I don't know. It could have the wrong response by doing this.
Yeah. Well, you know, Kathy, one of the things that reminds me of, and this goes back to one of our very early meetings of this group, is there's a rehabilitator, Cappy Springer here in Maine, who found that loons were very distressed when she had them in captivity, depending on the pattern of the shirt she was wearing. You know, and I've got, she sent me a picture of the shirts. You know, she said, if I wear this shirt in when I go to feed the loon, they get all freaked out and stressed and things of that nature. And when I wear a, you know, a plain and quite quiet colored shirt, the birds are entirely different and differentially responsive. The other thing I think about, and again, I see John Cooley from LPC on here. John, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I remember many years ago at one of the meetings at LPC, Tiffany, your squam biologist, was talking about how you sometimes put out sort of like warning signs and warning ropes around loon nesting territories. And Tiffany had noted that the color of the floats on the line seemed to affect the loon behavior. They were using those like foam swimming spaghetti things to float the ropes. And I remember Tiffany saying that if they used the purple floats, the loons hated the color, and it seemed to disturb them a lot. And I don't know why that stuck in my mind.
That's correct, Mark. Yep.
Yeah.
I can't believe you remember that, because I don't until you mention it, but you're right. And just would take some experimenting in this case to see if any of that would apply to this aggressive loon.
Yeah,
Didn't somebody share the same about canoes? Or is this an extrapolation from that information that they thought the canoe color might make a difference because of this? I just recall something about canoes and
yeah,
color.
there was a discussion. I don't remember any of the details. Yeah.
Okay.
We have 2 reports this year of loons attacking our signs that say "Stay away, loons nesting," and they're the navigational orange and white color.
interesting.
So which, yeah, not purple, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been wondering if what the reason was that they were attacking those. So.
Well, the other thing to think about too is the loons are seeing a wider spectrum of wavelengths than we are. And so it's not just what color do we see with our eyes, but what are they seeing?
Yeah, it
Okay,
hasn't been
this-
widespread, but just 2 cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. I don't think we can resolve this. I'm not even sure we're at a place where we can send them another email. I guess we probably could, Laura, and offer them some education and some sharing information from here. But let's move on, because I think this is something that we're never going to get a true answer to. Does anybody else want to share anything on this topic before we move on? Okay, thank you very much for sharing, Laura. I saw it coming. I knew it would come eventually. I wasn't looking forward to its coming, but I knew it was. So I
Kathy?
yes.
Kathy, this is Sherry. I just wanted to tell you quickly, the different patterns on a shirt was also mentioned by the really good loon rehabber and vet Marge Gibson in Wisconsin. So she also said that when certain volunteers had certain kinds of shirts on, it really upset the loon that was trying to get rehabbed. The other thing we did have a case here, but it was quite a few years ago on a small lake, about 100 acres, and it was some teenagers not knowing that a loon family was there, and it was a hot day, and a couple of them just decided to swim across the bay or whatever, and one of them did get attacked. I think the loons see a predator, somebody splashing around in the water. That's a predator, and it was too close to the nest, or the chicks or the territory, whatever. So those are the 2 examples I knew about.
That's my thought as well. Like, I've seen all the anecdotal reports in Canada, and I know that they've gone after bears and beavers. And I think there was one occurrence with a moose, and I'm saying they're not going to win against a moose. But they'll do it, and you'll know they're probably about the only thing that I know of that'll take on a trumpeter swan, and things like that. But that's very helpful. It doesn't resolve the issue, but it really puts us all a lot of information there. And maybe the other thing we can suggest to them is to hire a student, go out and put colors out there in stripes and put them on a little remote something and see if it makes a difference. And see if we can find out, like, maybe like sharks, you have to have a certain color bathing suit. I don't know. I don't have a good answer here. But let's move on. It's 4:25 already, so we're not going to likely get to the breakout groups for the subcommittee, but that's okay, because I don't think anybody has anything to share for the subcommittees. So let's just go over a roundtable, and I'm going to use what's in front of me for people, because otherwise I won't keep track of people. And I'm just thinking, just give your name and your group name and just a quick update, maybe a minute or 2. We only have like 35 minutes, so it'll go through real quick. And so for me, let's try Griffin, then Sheila, then Tracy, then Natasha, then Laura, Mark, Denise, Laura Puck. If you have anything to share again, Luann, Heinrich, John. I'll just call out names. Let's just keep it easy, and we'll start with Griffin if you have anything to say. Share.
Yeah, sure. My name is Griffin Archambault. I'm the research biologist at the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation here in the Adirondack Park of New York. I've been on a few meetings before, but want to start being here more regularly. Brief kind of update from the summer. Anecdotally, we had some field monitors, including myself. I participate on some of our field monitoring. It seemed like we had a few fewer loons this summer than we typically do. Again, that's just anecdotal, but the lake that I cover is a 15 territory lake, and I had maybe 10 or 11 loons on it this year. And last summer, I probably had 16 or 17 residents on it. I had another field monitor who he covers probably around 15 lakes for us in a summer, and he was saying the same thing. Some of his territories were just vacant that are usually filled. So we're interested in looking at the actual final numbers and seeing if it really holds true. We'll also see that in our census data. Once we get that processed, we'll see what the numbers look like for this year compared to previous years. And this year we had a small uptick in the number of nest rafts used from the small project that we have going on for that. We floated 30 rafts this year compared to about 15 last year. And we had 7 of those rafts used this year, 4 of which I think hatched chicks. And a few of them, they didn't get washed out. They didn't have much human disturbance, but we had a few rafts that just got abandoned by the loons. So we're kind of curious as to why that might have happened. But yeah, lots and lots of data processing and data cleaning to do from the summer. So no real numbers yet, but it was a good year overall. Kathy, I think you're muted.
You are right. Maybe I'll go next since I shouldn't forget myself either. And I'm next to my row. Nothing huge to share. We will not have all the data sorted out for several months yet, but I can tell you that for the first time ever, Breeding Bird Survey has shown a decline in loon population index declines. The number of loons per route has gone down for the first time ever in the Breeding Bird Survey. That started to show up last year. I think Doug will go over some of that. He's doing an ABA, American Birding Association magazine article coming up, I think in January or February, and he'll go over that then. I don't think he's publicizing it anywhere else before that time because it's a big article. But State of Canada Bird right now is listing loons as stable in Canada, but that was the first time we've seen the BBS show a trend of loons going down. Sheila, over to you.
Hi. I'm the chair of the Loon Conservancy Committee for the Gulf Chain of Lakes Association and our county. And so one thing that we noticed this year is an increase in hooked and tangled loons. And we bring all our injured loons to a wildlife rehabber in Garrison, Wild and Free. And I was talking to the vet when we brought in our last loon, and she said both she and her associate vet have seen a big increase in the number of hooked loons that came in this summer. So I was talking to Mark about this, but we had the most terribly hooked adult that we rescued last week. It had been hooked and tangled for probably, the vet said, 3 to 4 weeks and was starving, and it obviously did not make it. And it was in such a horrific condition that I just decided I have to do something about this. And Natasha, maybe you might be somebody who wants to participate, but I really would like to launch some sort of angler education program about what to do when you're fishing to prevent hooking loons and what to do if you do hook one. And so anyway, I'm just looking for some people. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the earlier meetings on the subcommittees, but if anybody would like to join me in working on developing some sort of education campaign that, you know, could be a general one, but also one that I really do want to specifically target in Minnesota, as well. So if you are interested, you could just email me.
So they don't know your email address. I can put that in the notes.
Yeah, you can put that in the notes, please.
Okay, we'll do. Tracy, you're up.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Tracy Hart. I work at Maine Audubon. I currently coordinate the Maine Loon Restoration Project, which involves rafts and outreach projects and fish-led free programs, and we do it as a partnership with other organizations. Work a lot with Mark as well, and Laura's really prominent in our, who you'll hear from soon. She's really prominent in our fish-led free activities. But yeah, so you're asking for some highlights and challenges. We did hatch 22 chicks from our rafts this year, which was great. It was increased our hatching rate by a lot from past years. But at the same time, fewer rafts were used proportionally. So we had 57 last year, we had 87 put out this year, and proportionally we had fewer of those get used. And then we also saw issues with those chicks surviving. So our productivity was actually down somewhat if you look across all the places all the territories where we had rafts out, even though the hatching success was just great on rafts. So if they chose to use the rafts, they really worked. But this seems like there's some other issues we have to work on in terms of survivorship and then also just getting more rafts used. A lot of those were fairly new rafts, so we may just because they're not they haven't been out long enough yet. We're just picking up the ones who use them right away. Yeah, and we also got almost 50 volunteers were trained to start doing more outreach. So it's really increased our capacity to present information locally throughout the state about loons. And so that's been fantastic to increase that program, which we call the Look Out for Loons program. Yeah, and I'd say overall, I think we're seeing more aggression in Maine throughout, loon on loon aggression. There was one case where 9 loons went and attacked a family and killed the chicks there. And which is the first time I've heard of like a group intrusion like that. I don't know how common that is, but lots of one-on-one fights that led to nest failure or chicks dying. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of aggression out there right now.
Anybody else had recurrences of this group attack situation? I don't know if I have, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I know we've had 2 at a time, but has anybody else heard of groups attacking chicks? Okay, something to keep an eye out for the future, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Natasha, you're up.
I'm Natasha Bartolotta. I'm with the National Loon Center in Cross Lake, Minnesota. And we had very locally kind of a weird year for our loons on the lake where we do most of our programs, from very early nesters, very late nesters, and very low productivity. Just kind of an off year for us. And we also had some bad rainstorms early on in the season with a lot of significant hail. So I'd be curious if there has been any documentation about the effects of hailstorms on loons, if any. And curious if even Sheila, you saw any of that down in Gull Lake, if you had anything happen after those early storms this year. But on the more optimistic side, we had a great year in terms of like community science programs with a lot of youth participation through junior loon biologists and high school groups that came out to get involved in loon monitoring. So we had a fun summer on that side and got to do also some loon monitoring workshops for adults interested in joining and being loon watchers. So the loon watching part was a bit of off year, but the people participation community science was a great year for us.
That's cool. Anybody else? Anybody? Mark, if maybe you know any information on hail, or maybe that's again something we have to keep in mind for the future.
Last year we did have one pair abandon the nest after a hailstorm. So that was the first time I'd heard of it. But others with more time and experience might have seen it more often.
Thank you. Laura Williams, you're up.
Hi, everyone. This is the first call I'm joining for. Tracy pulled me in. I am a wildlife biologist at Maine Audubon, and I lead our fish lead free efforts. We have a really fun, exciting update. We got legislation passed this year that banned small size painted lead jigs starting September 1st, and that bans the sale of them. Since September 1st, we've been able to buy back 220 pounds of those jigs from tackle stores throughout the state. So it's getting it out of their stock and not ending up in tackle boxes and then not ending up in the lake. So just doing a lot of work on that and excited to jump on the lead subcommittee and see what else we can do with lead and fishing education and all that. That's what I'm here for.
It's been a really
Right.
exciting new take on some of the buyback work where we hadn't tried it before, buying back from the merchants. We had the merchants involved in buying back tackle from anglers. So it's been exciting how successful it's been.
It's an interesting way of doing it. In Canada, it's hard to even tell what's lead, what isn't lead at the stores. So they like to talk about, well, we should tell people not to use lead. It's like they can't tell. So it makes it that much more difficult. So there's a lot of work to have to be done here. I think we're going to have to let you guys in the US start banning it, and the guys in Europe that are working as well. They're banning a lot of lead right now. And then once these two big bodies start banning it, the demand and the supply is going to go down. And maybe then we'll make a difference here because we don't have near as much what's the word I want? Market demand here as they win the states. So it makes a big difference if depending on what's available, if it gets sold here or not. Denise, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Sylvie.
Yep, just how it looks. Yeah, I'm from the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation in the Adirondacks with Griffin. So he gave you kind of the Loon report. I work on the education and community program side of things. So I've been really excited to continue connecting with people and learning about the lead buyback programs and just all of the different ways to address the lead issue. So that's what I'm really excited about being here for. And then also hearing some other ideas about just programs, how you conduct outreach, reach out to different groups, different people to kind of make them more aware of how to kind of responsibly be out on the water with loons. I think all that stuff is really great and interesting. So thanks for having me.
No problem. We should make a note. There's a lot of information in the folders online. We also worked together in 2022 and developed a standard document that's a very simple education flyer in French and English. If we have somebody who can translate in Spanish, it can go in Spanish really easily. That's specifically for people who just show up on lakes once, like the Airbnbs or the Verbos or whatever those are, and to get them into that market. So thanks for Natasha and a few of us. That document is available on the website and you can readily grab it and you can drop your logo onto it, which is cool. And that's thanks to Natasha for managing that. Laura Puck, you're next.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that I don't have much to say, I guess, but just to present myself. So yeah, I'm Laura. I work for Québec Oiseau, non-profit organization in Quebec, in Canada, for bird conservation, and I work with Kathy for the Canadian Lakes Loon Survey. And yeah, I guess just as Kathy said, we still have to wait for the data to be analyzed to have the results for this year. So yeah, I don't have much to share.
I have to give Laura a lot of credit. We knew we were short on people surveying Quebec, and it is that second largest population of loons in North America. And she has managed to increase the numbers dramatically for Quebec and managed to maintain a good number this year. So that's fantastic. She can do something which I cannot do, which is speak fluently in French, and great skills there. So I want to big kudos for Laura for being part of the group and being part of the Loon survey. She's been terrific. Luann?
Hello, I'm Luann Jars from I'm with Loon Conservation Association. I'm the secretary for the group. For our organization, we had a pretty good year. We got 3 new members on our board. So new members, new ideas. We hope that's going to help with our newsletter. We'll have more people putting in on that and reaching more people through that. Our loons this year, I don't have any numbers because I'm not the ranger, but I get a lot of calls, and we did have a big problem with entanglements all summer long. It was very sad. We don't have any rehabbers. We've got a couple of vets in the northern part of the state that will look at them, but pretty much cut them free. And if they weren't really hurt, let them go and hope for the best. So we're always interested. I'm very interested in those lead buyback that you're mentioning. I'm going to look those up because we would like to try something like that. And up until now, we've never had the resources. But I think maybe now with our new people on board, we could get something like that together before next year.
Good luck with that. That's a great idea. We actually
Yeah.
put a couple of proposals in this year to get money to do that. We didn't succeed. So hopefully everybody will move that way.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Well,
And you're
I
with
just enjoy what you're in Michigan Loon Preservation
That's what I thought.
Association.
I thought so.
With Arlene and gang.
Heinrich, did you want to share anything?
Sure. I just want to briefly talk about our rather poor season. I'm in Western Maine, Giza Lake, 2,500 acres, about 12 territories and some surrounding ponds, another 4 territories. On the lake, we had 4 eggs this year. Of those, 3 hatched, and none of the chicks survived beyond 1 week. Overall, not a terrible event if it happens only once in a decade, but still what bothered me a great deal is the fact that we had no clue what happened to those chicks, whether they got attacked by their own kind or whether they're eagles. We got plenty of eagles flying around, whether there were any kind of turtle events, or I just feel there ought to be some way of monitoring chicks in their first week or so that it goes beyond an occasional checkup. And wondered whether anybody has any suggestions, because it seems rather frustrating to spend 4 weeks, looking at checking on loons very religiously, as we are all volunteers, and then losing those chicks within a week without a clue of what's going on. Unfortunately, we have overall the last 7 years that I've been doing this, only 1 or 2 witnessed eagle strikes. We have witnessed loon predation, but only intruders, not any kind of mass attack. But beyond that, we have very little real data. And I'm wondering whether anybody has any suggestions, whether it's worthwhile getting volunteers mobilized to watch those loons from dawn to dusk. But that in itself could be a problem too. So I just thought I'd ask for some help, ideas.
Well, honestly, that's the only idea I can think of. Does anybody have any immediate ideas to share with Heinrich now? Or if you want to share them with him later, send them to me and I can forward them on, or with Heinrich's permission, I can put his email in the notes and people can contact him directly. But I would think about the only thing you can do is monitor him more closely by watching him.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you use a lot of game cameras already, but could you increase the number of game cameras to be in nursery areas, or I don't know.
Well, we're really just using those cameras, but just to keep an eye on the platforms itself, because we had a fair amount of predation in the past. So to really identify the predators and or human intervention, those kinds of things. But I was actually thinking LPC uses their webcams, and those have a much wider range and can actually cover an entire pond. And they can also be steered and can be used to at least partially monitor a pond. I remember LPC's, one of their cameras really scanned almost the entire pond. But it would require that, their camera operator stays on duty for another week or so.
Mhm.
And a week is not a magic time. I'm just, but I do think a lot of loons chicks get lost in that first week, and it has in part to do with the parents who are not paying attention. Inexperienced parents are not doing well, keeping them alone and exposed.
Right, because you had that one male get lead poison last year, right? Their most productive male, and then
Yeah,
so now you have new pairs
that's
without
right.
experience.
We had no tragedy this year. And I was wondering about whether the strikes by fishermen or the entanglements have to do with the professionalism of the anglers involved. It seems to me that tragedy with loon entanglement usually has to do with kids and low quality gear that's being left out on docks and so forth. We have a fair amount of serious bass fishermen who very rarely get into trouble with loons.
The ones I was just going to say, some of the ones that we had hooked were hooked with treble hook and a double treble hook in the back of this last one. And I have talked to fishermen. I go up to them and talk to them, and some of them say, this is my lake, and if they're so dumb to get close to me, it's their own fault. And then there are plenty that are good and will say, no, I won't cast towards loons. But the other troubling thing that happened was that so when my loon watching friend and I were searching for this hooked juvenile, and we couldn't find it, and we were spending days searching for it, and we saw this juvenile preening. So we stopped our fishing boat and we were watching it with binoculars. And when it saw us, it swam right over to us, and it went right behind the motor and looked up at us like my golden retriever begging for a treat. And then it went under the boat and it came up the other side, same thing. Come on, give me a fish. And so, I mean, I did talk to Walter Piper about it, and he said he had seen that on one of their study lakes, and that when people stopped, throwing minnows to it, it did learn, it changed its behavior and no longer was continuing to beg. But I think it's a problem because a lot of fishermen, my good loon watching friend is an angler, and she said fishermen just throw their dead minnows into the lake. And so the loons learn to do that. And then if people are doing catch and release, they also learn that they can get fish that way. So, I mean, I know there are a lot of fishermen that are trying to do the right thing, but the loons are very smart.
Yeah, and they learn.
Yes. And it's a fair point. And if you look at YouTube, there's a lot of videos of loons chasing lures, amazingly number. Now we're going to run out of time. So if anybody has something that they really would like to share, put your hand up and I'll move you up the list. For now, who's next? Sharon, you're next.
I am.
Yes.
I'm on Sheila. I'm in the same, Sheila heads our committee. I'm just a committee member. So I'm at she's at the north end of our chain of lakes. I'm at the south end. And Sheila, I don't know if you want to, or maybe you did this a month ago, because I haven't been able to come to a couple meetings now. talk about that red-throated loon that you found. But the interesting thing for me this year was I count 2 bays, and they're both maybe about a mile diameter. And this is a heavily populated lake. I mean, thousands of boats, lots of recreation, a couple of big resorts down at our end. And the variety of nests this year was just amazing to me. We had 7 nesting pairs between the 2 bays. Only 3 ended up having chicks that hatched. And only of those, only 1 pair on each side had 1 chick, which I have still seen as of today and yesterday in the 2 bays. But one of the nests looked like, if you didn't know any better, and the loon wasn't sitting on it at the time, just looked like a big pile of sticks about 20 feet from shore. And eventually, and I got a couple pictures of a beaver swimming by it closely. Well, sure enough, when the loon finally abandoned the nest, they made it into a big loon den. I mean, a big beaver den. So that won't be available to them next year. The one next over from that was about 10 feet from the edge of shore in an area that was kind of reeds, but right in front of a grouping of townhouses. And it was on a little mound of ground that was maybe 3 foot diameter, and all of the last year's growth had collapsed in on it, and it was a perfect little tent. So I don't think there's any way an eagle could have seen it in there. I don't know, but that was one that hatched eggs. They laid eggs, but they never hatched. Then we had 2 or 3 that are more the typical ones that are on a little bit of an area that's usually 3 or 4 or 5 feet from shore. And then the final one was in one of the big resorts here. They cut a channel in years ago, and certainly when they were finding the nest, it was a calm channel. But again, a little mound of grass, maybe 3 foot diameter, right under a pedestrian bridge going from 2 parts of this resort. And I have some hysterical pictures where the loon is still sitting on the nest, and there are probably 100 people out on the grass 50 feet from this loon nest doing activities. And it's just sitting there like nothing was going on. So we have some pretty tenacious loons, which is kind of interesting. And yes, and certainly I was involved in a couple of things Sheila's talking about. We got more calls this year about loons being beached, but then we could never find them because they were only slightly maybe injured. Then they go back in the lake and we had a hard time following them. Or again, people, I think, seeing the really aggravating bathing behavior and thinking that the loon was injured or had a hook or something. But so it was an interesting summer.
Thank you. I just actually dropped in our link that for a folder that Jay set up quite a while ago, where people can put in nests with known outcomes, eggs that have been broken by known outcomes. And I was thinking at the same time, if you have unique nests, put them in there as well. Because I myself see a lot of different nests because we cover such a large range, but perhaps in some areas you don't see as many unique nests. Next is John, if you have anything you'd like to share.
Hi, yeah, John Cooley from the Loon Preservation Committee, a biologist here, and it's really interesting to hear everybody else's summers. We had a slight increase in the number of paired adult loons in New Hampshire. So a little different than, for example, what Griffin, you were saying. And although on some lakes like Squam Lake, I know Tiffany had a bunch of banded loons that were missing, which would suggest that, you know, there was turnover in the adults, not a good sign. And we had not a great nesting year. And one of the few obvious causes that we could see was just how hot it was. It was a, you know, record, the hottest summer here ever. And we had a lot of nests that just sat past the due date on inviable eggs, probably 3 times as many as we'd usually see. So it seemed like maybe those eggs are getting cooked. And we had a number of tangled loons. I don't know if it was more than usual. It felt like a lot. Some of those rescues were successful, but we did get a few loons that ended up with the treble hooks in their feet. And in one case, we were able to rescue the loon and it lost one of its toes, but we could release it again. In another case, we recovered a loon in that state after it had died. So, and it's just nasty, the injuries they get from those treble hooks. So a subject of outreach on the lakes where that's happening for sure. We're also, Caroline's not on the call, I don't think, but we were pleased with our lead tackle buyback and outreach to include the transfer stations in New Hampshire, just getting a mailbox basically at the transfer station so people could come to the dump with their trash and also get rid of their lead tackle anytime they wanted. That brought in almost as much as our lead tackle buyback at the bait shops, thousands and thousands of pieces of lead tackle. So that was really exciting to have that. And it was just the beginning at one part of the state where we got that kind of participation. So we're really hopeful that that'll be another good way to bring it in. It's super cool to hear that that's also happening in Maine in terms of, getting the lead out. So yeah, great. Thanks.
Thanks for talking, John. So we probably can go another 15 minutes. Sherry, have you spoken? Or do you have anything to add? I'm trying to remember who's we've got and we haven't got here. So Sherry and Steve and are two great ones. Gail and Jay also have not spoken. So any of you guys have anything you want to share?
This is Sherry, and I could go quickly. I know for sure I've done about 50. I usually do 15 lakes every summer, and another 10 that I kind of supervise with other people who have problems. And we had on the smaller lakes like that, we had about 50% success. So take, for instance, Snowbank Lake had 10 territories, and there was half of them or 6 of them out of 10 that able to have at least one chick. A lot of the twins or 2 chick things didn't really work. It usually ended up with just one chick. Then on some of the smaller lakes, again, it was about 9 successful territories out of 18 territories that there was at least one chick that ended up as a juvenile, and we were able to see it by itself after the parents left, and it was still feeding itself and practicing flying and things like that. On Lake Vermilion, the biggest lake in this area that I have some data on, they had 29 chicks out of last year, 29 chicks last year, and this year they only had 13 chicks. So Vermilion has a bunch of rivers coming in. There was a lot of flooding going on. Shagawa Lake had 10 territories, and only 3 territories were successful. Again, their flooding in the June 18th big storm tended to just kind of flood a lot, and so they ended up at a really low number, only 3 successful out of 10. So kind of up and down, it sort of depended on the watershed as to what was going on. We had one adult, we have one adult still on Shagawa that has a very severe wing problem. The left wing is part of it is missing. We tried a rescue 3 different times and it didn't work. So it's not sure what to do next. And then there was one that Mark Pokris helped us with. It was a juvenile that had avian pox virus. So at first it was doing okay, and the pox virus fell off, and then it grew back, and it ended up getting taken by an eagle, even though the parents were very, very alert. The other really weird thing, this is like a last statement from me. The other really weird thing is we had a very small pond that this family usually it's stocked by trout, stocked with trout. It usually is very successful, very clean water, and it had 2 chicks to start with, but those parents were not staying on together. They were always taking a break and going somewhere else. So pretty soon, one chick was not getting fed hardly anything, and it actually looked like it was 2 weeks behind the other chick. Then the older chick that was doing better independently disappeared at 8 weeks old. It can't fly, so something happened. And then the chick that was delayed 2 weeks ended up surviving and doing pretty well. So just very strange situation. That's all from me.
Thank you. That's very good to know. Um, whom do we have left? Steve, would you like to share anything? You're next on the list.
Can you hear me?
I can. So yes, go for it.
All right. Well, I'm just a newcomer, so I just have been sitting and quietly listening to all this. I represent Big Man Trap Lake in Minnesota, and our program with the artificial nesting platforms dates back to the 1980s. And each spring on the day the ice leaves the lake, we put out 20 platforms. They're all aluminum, and we have 24 nesting territories that we've identified on the lake. The lake is about 1,650 acres, but a lot of private lakeshore, undeveloped lakeshore, a lot of points and bays, and it's just a perfect setup for the loon families. This year we had 44 eggs. Only 20 of them hatched, which was really low for us. And that a few years ago, we had 49 eggs and 40 of them hatched. And of those that hatched, 29 made it throughout the summer. This year, of the 20 that hatched, we were down to, I think it was 13 juveniles that made it through the summer. But I appreciate just listening to everything that I've been able to listen to today and being able to share a little bit with you.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear from you. Who's next? Gail or Jay, whichever one would like to go.
Sure, I'm Gail. I live in Minnesota. Unfortunately, unlike most or all of you, I don't actually work for a loon organization. But 15 years ago, I started a loon group on Facebook. It's called Larry's Loon Lovers, and it now has around 2,000 members. And it's very active throughout the summer. And I want to thank Sheila. She contributes a lot of posts. I also watch a lot of webcams. I keep a list on the Facebook page of every active loon cam that I'm aware of. And I think I'm pretty up to date because people feed me information. So now there's one active loon cam. It's on Lake Abimi near Milo, Maine. And it does have one juvenile that we've been tracking. We've seen it making attempts to fly and doing a lot of wing rowing. So it was really nice to watch this chick, literally for months developing. And both parents have left the lake. So now the juvenile is there on its own. That's it for me.
Thank you, Gail. Did you see the Alaskan nest cam?
Yes.
Okay,
I posted about that.
That's maybe I saw it on your site first time. Okay. Jay, did you have anything to add?
I don't really have much to add. I think everybody might know me. I'm Jay Mager. I teach at Ohio Northern University, and I'm a behavioral ecologist who's studied loon behavior for about 30 or so years. And so I'm really interested in all the things that you guys are all describing from a behavioral interest, not just with respect to loons chasing swimmers, but also discussing the behavioral shifts associated with territories and nesting platforms. So I'm very grateful for all of you for sharing your stories. And I guess I'm in charge of the subcommittee. It's supposed to be working on the nesting platforms, but I've been delinquent over the last month or so. But if you are interested in being a part of that. If you can attach your email address to the chat, I'll just make sure that I get you in when we finally get ourselves together.
Is there time for me to ask a question?
We'll make time.
It seems that there are a lot of intruder loons that are killing chicks and driving away the nest owners. Is that more of a problem now in the past, or has it always been this much?
Jay may be able to respond to this, and John as well as I could, but based on Walter's work, I think it's always been there. I wouldn't be surprised if you get more of it in healthy populations where there's a lot of activity, and less of it in areas where you have fewer density of pairs. So the healthier your population gets, I'm assuming, the more aggression you're going to see, because you have the healthier the nesting pair, the more aggression. I don't know if John or Jay have anything to add to that.
I don't know, John, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with you, Kathy, that Harry likes to say, our director here, that if there were 2 loons left in the world, they'd try and kill each other or their chicks. And we've always seen that in New Hampshire. In fact, this year we only saw only a single nest that failed due to intruding loons, and we have that as a category of nest failure cause because we often have at least a handful, but this year was down to just the one. So it comes and goes, I think, but it's been ever present. Yeah, and I agree, Kathy, that as the density of the population increases, you expect to see a little bit more of it, but I'm not sure that that explains, or it seems complicated to me whether you did in a given population, whether you could attribute what you're seeing in a given year to that.
So
Yeah.
That makes sense.
does anyone know, are there other either birds or wildlife that do this to each other?
Yeah, there's even nest mates that will kill one another, in some birds. The concept of homicide or even infanticide or simplicide has been seen in a lot of species, a lot of water birds in particular, including herons and egrets. And as you might know too, a lot of colonial water birds like boobies and will often have 2 offspring, and usually one will kill the other either directly by bludgeoning it to death or pushing it out into the sun where it's not shielded by the parent, and consequently the subordinate chick will succumb to heat stroke.
Well, at least loons don't do that kind of thing.
Well, I do think some loons, there is sometimes infanticide, or excuse me, simplicide in loons. I do know that once in a while loon chicks will kill one another. As they establish dominance. You've probably seen this before, where they'll get into that peck fight very early on, and the submissive individual usually puts their neck right along the water there after a little bit of time, and it sort of worked out. But sometimes it has been aggressive, that a chick has become injured and has died, and there's evidence of that on the nest. Sometimes you'll see that too.
Yeah, that happened on one of the LPC webcams a few years ago.
Yeah. It's hard to see. I remember going one year, I was watching loons and I saw this intruder coming in, and I know it was happening, and I was studying parental behavior in the loons, and here's my test subject sitting in front of me, and of course the intruder came in and just grabbed the chick and tossed it up in the air, just flung it and eventually killed it. And it was really hard for a number of reasons. It's a great question. I wish I knew the answer to that one. But sometimes, I keep asking the loons, but they never tell me, so I don't know. To John's point, it's probably a culmination of a number of variables that are not just something that you would associate with a season or a certain habitat, but it could also be just individual drivers each year. An individual could be really sick, an individual could be really hostile towards others due to other factors. So sorry to talk so much, but
Yeah, I was wondering if there was more of this with humans being responsible for less suitable shoreline for loons. So they have to fight more for what's available. I don't know.
Tracy, did you have something to say or add?
Yeah, not something different. I know we're running overtime by a lot, but I just had a question to ask of this group. We're about to put out a newsletter and a bunch of to our participants and the volunteers in the Loon Restoration Program. And a lot of them had wanted to find other ways to connect with each other and with other people involved in loons. And so Mark had offered for me to invite them to this group. And I just want to make sure that's okay. It's going to go out to something like 350 people. I think a lot of them are really locally focused and probably, I don't know, I doubt many would join, but I just want, before I put that in the newsletter, I want to make sure that you agree with Mark that they can join this group.
Well, I think anybody can join. The question is it something that they're going to appreciate? Like, we do have people here who are volunteers and on a specific lake, and we have both ends of the spectrum. They may find it a little bit too into the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would perhaps add a qualifier that we are a technical networking group.
Yeah.
I would think that'd be the way to do it. Any other thoughts on that?
Oh, I would just say, I'm just one of these citizen science type people. And so I think that anybody who loves loons would actually, they might really enjoy this group because you can just learn so much. And so, I would just kind of maybe put some things in there about, like this, what the subcommittees are working on. And sometimes they're speakers,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that reminds me, I should ask something to the group. So Paul Spitzer got in touch with Mark about this book he's working on, and he wanted to know if he could share it with the LRR books, a lot of the information. And so anyway, Mark mentioned yesterday that he actually thought this group might be a better group for Paul to share his work with. And it's, I'm not going to do it justice by describing it, but it's, his years and years of research and study, and the book is written in more of the memoir tradition. And he thought it would be, of interest to naturalists. And so that's why Mark thought this might be a good group for Paul to share his work with. And so he was wondering if maybe Paul could be invited to be a speaker at this group's meeting in November for about a half an hour.
How many people are familiar with this book? Maybe that's the place to start. I'm not against the idea. Let me say that, but I don't know the book. I don't, so I can't.
It hasn't been published yet. So I could send you the email from Paul that describes it, and just to Kathy. And if you want to think about it and get back to Mark and me.
Is it about loons?
Oh yeah, it's all about
okay.
loons.
That helps.
And on the Atlantic coast, coastal Atlantic coast loons.
Oh, so it's on offshore loons.
Yeah.
That would actually, yes, I think that'd be kind of an interesting topic. I like that idea. Anybody else want to say whether they like that idea or not too? Yep.
It sounded fascinating to me, and I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, have them reach out to me. I'm actually thinking about taking that Monday off, so I might turn it over to Jay or Natasha to lead the meeting. So it'd be great to have somebody to speak. And it just means we push back our subcommittee summaries, but that's okay because we're all so busy. We're not getting that done very quickly, anyways. So yes, send me some information, and I think it's likely at this point. It all depends what we can work out with him. He might not be available that day.
Yeah, he might not be available. Mark just suggested November.
Yep. Sure. Send it to me.
I'll forward you the email.
Okay. What else do we have? Well, let me see. Mark has probably already gone to his meeting, and probably there's other people who have to go as well. Yeah. So go ahead and we will send out notes, and we have a bit of a plan for the November meeting, and I hope everybody has a good month. Take care.
Thank you, Kathy, as always.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Kathy.